So I finished my analysis of Martín Zubimendi, of Real Sociedad and of Spain, and I was suddenly struck with this feeling, and I said it to Jamie in the office, I said it to myself, I said, I must be wrong. If Liverpool have identified this guy, if Slot has identified this guy, my analysis must be wrong. And the comments began to agree with me. Some people, of course, agreed. They thought that another profile fit this Liverpool team really well, but something kept nagging at me, and I had to go out there and look at what I was wrong about. So before I move on this, I just want to admit I'm probably wrong about Martín Zubimendi, but I said that in the other video. This is where I think I'm right though, and it's a little bit more complex than just he fits or doesn't fit the team, and it's a little bit more complex than he's a good player, he's a bad player. Let's zoom in and talk a little bit about this quote here from Xabi Alonso, this here from David Ornstein, and why these profiles are all so different, and also why that might actually be great for Liverpool when signing a player like Zubimendi. First of all, obviously, Liverpool needing to release him and through a release clause of 60 million euros is not a small task. They can pay the money, sure, most probably, right? And as they said, there is a very high bar for players. So if you've got a high bar, of course, you're going to have to pay the premium for those guys. But with paying a premium, you then have to get a player who is premium to play for your team. And so far, a lot of other projects, a lot of other teams have struggled to get him specifically, but also just other players from Spain to do that and therefore to fit into their project. He's 25 years old. He's just about to come into this prime time where you'd imagine there are going to be a lot of offers coming in for him, especially after a good Euros, where in the final, a lot of people said he came in and it wasn't even an understudy, actually filled the Rodri, or the sixth role, very well for Spain. But it was this quote specifically which made me question what I thought. It might be the person saying it, in the same way as if I say, Gandhi said, yo, go jump off a cliff. You go, well, Gandhi might have had a point. The same, I don't know about Gandhi. It's just a person. It could be anyone with a great quote. But you know, if Jurgen Klopp said, go jump off a cliff, I would probably just assess the quote. The same goes for Xabi Alonso. He said this 2 years ago in a Guardian interview. This is, I think, one of the Liverpool journalists online tweeted this, but it wasn't his work. Martin is a player, Martin's a player all coaches would want. He's generous, he always thinks more about his teammates than himself. That's Xabi Alonso. Alonso also said this, he, Zubimendi, has that ability to generate play, to make those around him better, always offering solutions to improve the move. He wants what the next step is, he understands what the next step is. Before the ball gets to him, he has the ability to organize the axes. That's amazing. I loved working with him. Listen, if Xabi Alonso is going to endorse someone, he is good enough in my book, weirdly all of a sudden. And I guess you need sometimes someone to make you excited about a player. Not only, by the way, is obviously Xabi Alonso an ex-Real Sociedad guy who worked with him in the Real Sociedad B team, but he's also now an excellent manager and excellent coach. Someone who maybe 2 years ago, people would have gone, that's just Xabi Alonso. Now people go, that's Xabi Alonso. So why is he different to all of these other profiles? Well, let's just do a little like-for-like comparison, because you can do that, right? Next to Ugarte, he is slightly less defensive. I think Ugarte is probably a little more defensively minded, but his distribution and movement definitely improved. Against someone like Alan Varela, he's slightly less aggressive. I think Varela is certainly one of those aggressive players who I love to see attacking in the Mascherano type way that he does, and certainly getting into people. And then, but compared to Zubimendi is maybe slightly calmer on the ball, although I do like the swagger that Varela has. I've got to admit, I do like his swagger, right? And then, of course, Ederson. Ederson, I think, is probably a hybrid of those two. I actually wouldn't be upset if we signed Ederson either as well or in lieu of not getting Zubimendi, but I think both these players are difficult to pry away from their sides. Overall, I think Zubimendi is probably a slightly deeper lying Ederson overall in his play, and maybe slightly more focused on that right-hand side, but let's see. Anyway, I went on in my last piece of analysis to talk about Busquets, Rodri, two guys who came to define roles, but in different ways, but also in a way that I think I didn't really speak about last time. Busquets and Rodri were both people who made other players around them better. Now, when looking at the Liverpool team, I think they have some incredible individual quality, and there are certainly some players in there that make the players around them better. I think Alexis McAllister is incredible at join-up play, picking out a pass, those kind of things. But there are also some players who individually do contribute things which are fantastic. I'm getting to a point here, guys. Within that, that's great, but there isn't someone of the profile of Zubimendi. There isn't someone who reaches that high bar in terms of calmness on the ball, in terms of dictating play, in terms of the axes that we heard Xabi Alonso speak about. And you can lay things out in these kind of formations all day long and say, oh, yeah, well, Zubimendi, he doesn't fit that double pivot, does fit here, doesn't fit there. I think he offers a lot of options to what Slot wants to do. And you can frame, I think, like I said in my last video, you can frame it negatively or positively. I personally was leaning more towards the negative because I felt there are other places we wanted to improve first. But if you want to skew it in the positive aspect and say Liverpool are spending obviously 60 million here, potentially on a fantastic player who makes hooking up with Szoboszlai, McAllister, Jones, Ravenberg, Bajcetic, Trent Alexander-Arnold better, and immediately the players ahead of those guys as well, then yeah, I'm all into that. If he makes the life of Konate, Van Dijk easier, great. I think there is still slightly a bit of analysis stuck in the old, we need a 6, what does a 6 do in England type thing. And so I go back to the quote, the Xabi Alonso quote of, Martin's a player who all coaches would want. And then I questioned why. Why would Slot specifically want him? Well, it's easy, of course, to lay out a team like this, right? Or it's easy, of course, to lay out his old Feyenoord team like this and tell me that, well, Mats Pfeiffer plays on the right side of midfield and Quentin Timber plays on the left side of midfield. And the guys in between, they're centre-backs and a CDM. But when we actually analyse this, which was game week 34 of the Eredivisie, we get a slightly different picture. And this is one thing I really wanted to talk about. If Liverpool are going to integrate Trent Alexander-Arnold, if they are going to integrate Nunez and all these different players and have a balanced midfield along with what they want to do in the team, they need, I don't think he's going to be a like for Mats Pfeiffer. I think Liverpool would have gone for Mats Pfeiffer if they thought it was that guy. But what they're going for is a hookup player here, a player who can dictate a little bit, break up the play and instantly distribute out in quite simple avenues which are going to revitalise the team from being attacked on and make the most of possession. Pass, 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 pass. He's not going to be that final guy who picks out the passes like, say, a Xabi Alonso, but he has the ability, when he gets into the final third, to pick out a nice lofted pass. That doesn't mean that he has the passing range of someone like Xabi Alonso. It doesn't mean that he has the movement ability of a Busquets. It doesn't mean that he has the reading of the game, though I do think his reading of the game is fantastic, of a Rodri. We saw that in the Euros. Again, I can be wrong on my analysis. You could skew this the other way and say, hey, well, he does a very specific role. Will that work in the Premier League? These kind of things. There's a reason that people like Arsenal were looking at him. There's a reason that Liverpool are now interested in him. This was the average positions from that game. That's Mats Pfeiffer there, right? These are the other two midfielders, and that's obviously a double pivot. That should probably closer to an attacking 10. Whether he actually is a 10, Timber, there's another debate, right? By the way, whether we want to play Szoboszlai as a 10 is a whole other debate. Look at this. Look at where Gertruda starts as a fullback, number 4. That's possibly a backline which is not exactly like, just a couple of centre-backs and some fullbacks, but you get what I'm saying. Look where he ends up. In between two quite heavily split centre-backs. Obviously, he's doing much more of a defensive role, but it's interesting to see that a fullback like that is doing that job. Now, that's not to say that, therefore, I think someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold therefore going to sit in between, say, a Konate and a Van Dijk and just do that. But what I do think is there is a slight preoccupation at the moment with McAllister and Zubimendi, or these two, just two, they don't have to be, either of those don't have to be McAllister or Zubimendi, just a double pivot 2. Because what we've seen in pre-season is the success of a double pivot, a win against Betis, a win against Manchester United, a win against Arsenal, the team slowly but surely improving, the team being sure in what they're doing. What we were really seeing there is a tactical adaptability, which I think is great, but clearly in training, Slot has identified, well, we're going to need a Zubimendi type because I don't have that gel type hookup player who frankly, when you look at a lot of statistical analysis, doesn't wow you or blow you away. He doesn't pass the opposition to death, but he does make important passes in every game. He doesn't pass for the sake of passing. He doesn't tackle for the sake of tackling. His movement, his reading of the game is absolutely fantastic. It puts him a step ahead of everyone else. He's already reading where the game is going to go. And there have been many times where Liverpool have been behind or worried about not being able to read the opposition or getting, outthought by an opposition. You need thinkers out there on the field. I think there are clearly leaders. There's Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk, I think McAllister, Szoboszlai, Salah, even the likes of Diaz, Núñez and Gakpo. Those guys are becoming Robertson. These guys are all leaders. Alisson, of course, but Alisson we'll talk about in another video. The point with this is, right, yes, I think there are probably what most people would identify as flaws in some of Zubimendi's game. I think they can definitely be coached up. I don't think there's such glaring flaws that we are, we're going to criticize him and say he's not worth signing. What I'd certainly say is something we've learned from the Klopp era is being better than the sum of your parts is far better than being a brilliant player within that. We've seen Núñez go away and have an incredible summer with Uruguay. We've seen Gakpo go away and have a good Euros. Diaz equally with Colombia. Salah very often was frustrated with Egypt. Trent going out there and just being vilified by England fans. Van Dijk obviously going away and people always having an agenda against him. Alisson is obviously one of the best goalkeepers in the world and certainly has been for quite some time. Though, again, I think we need to have a conversation about him as a goalkeeper and what he brings to this Liverpool team later. If Alisson is in this side, I'd be interested to see him play out from the back. And then, of course, there's McAllister and Szoboszlai, captain of his national team and someone who's pretty much a stalwart in the midfield. Zubimendi sits very comfortably alongside those. I'm not saying here that Zubimendi is going to displace one other guy and make them terrible. I certainly think that it's probably Endo who he probably comes in for, and that's probably the floor of where Liverpool's midfield is. It might also slightly get in the way of the Bajcetic-Morton combination or progress, and it certainly makes me think, well, maybe it makes a couple of these other guys better in that I think Jones, McAllister, Trent, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, all these quite individual players who Klopp did obviously manage to knit together and has obviously knitted together in a great system in pre-season, will be better with a guy who is a considerate, analytical reader of the game, who may not be there as, the guy who is the all-out box-to-box midfielder of what we wanted Steven Gerrard to be or Szoboszlai to be or whatever it is. But what we might also have within the system that Slot wants to play are numerous different iterations of this midfield. You keep the positions as you walk out on the field, but what you also do is you have roles that you then thrive within. And within that thriving, say you're here as Zubimendi or you're here as McAllister, you make this guy better, Núñez instantly becomes better because the movement of Szoboszlai is instantly better and Núñez can drop a little bit deeper and Szoboszlai can overtake because someone like Zubimendi has read the game, kept it further down the field. There's a reason Arteta and those other guys were interested in this. It's because he reads the game. It's because he will read the space, work out where they're going to play the ball, cut those kind of things out. And that doesn't pass an eye test in the same way as someone who's very busy, like a Varela, or someone who's very pretty, like an Edison, or someone who's very aggressive, like Ugarte. But if Xabi Alonso likes him, then he's damn well good enough for me. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. I think good when YouTubers can admit, I was marginally wrong, because that's the best thing that someone with an ego who thinks they're good on camera can do. I will chat to you guys in a little while. I hope you enjoyed the profile. Obviously, there are other things. I can talk to you a little bit about if you've come from the other video and you're not au fait with all this. Obviously, he's played for Real Sociedad for a couple of years. They're an incredibly technically proficient team. Obviously, he's going to have weaknesses which he has to improve on. He's only 25. He's not reaching his peak yet. But which other Liverpool signings have not necessarily had weaknesses when coming in? Probably only Alisson and Van Dijk. Everyone else has had something where you've gone, you can improve on that, you can improve on that. I think his passing, his numbers aren't the best in Europe. He's not Bruno Guimaraes, and he's not Busquets. He's not Alonso. But I think what he provides is quite a pragmatic, fundamental need within this slot side. And I'm wondering now if it is these units that Liverpool will deploy out like, so for instance, you might start the game with McAllister and say, Szoboszlai, I don't want to grab him, there, and pretend this is another player, pretend this is like a Harvey Elliott. Later on in the game, you move Szoboszlai forward into that 10, you bring on Zubimendi, your control of the game is different, the emphasis on the field is different, McAllister might push a little further down, Zubimendi more there, maybe Trent comes a little bit further forward, pushing Szoboszlai beyond Nunes, Nunes goes a little bit wider, Diaz is suddenly out there, and you're overloading the opposition in a way that you might not have been able to do with an Endo, because Endo isn't as calm on the ball as Zubimendi. There are other players who aren't as calm. And whilst they have passing ability and statistics and those kind of things, knock them up a few ranks, it's not quantifiable. I think this is very quantifiable. But Alonso was another player who was difficult to quantify. The impact he had on the team, it was like his shadow over the field influenced where the opposition went. I think that's really important to acknowledge here. The secret sauce, if you will. The thing that made him underestimated. And if we can get that Xabi Alonso of this generation, not the passing range, but the reading of the game, I'm all in. Hope you guys understood this video. Not that I think it's very high-minded, but I hope you understood people can admit when they can improve on their analysis. And I would love to chat to you again in a little while. Much love.